Oh my god. Oh goodness. Look at me.
How did we get to a place where Chante literally took back Brion after he cheated with two other women in a threesome? Well, I want to let you know that she had to take him back. There was actually no choice. She had no choice. Why do I say she had no choice? Well, actually, because when we talk about attachment styles, which we do all the time on this channel, we understand why Chante made the decision that she made. Brion is somebody who she liked and cared about and loved, and it was a shock to her system to see him cheat on her in the villa. And of course, for her, she has to process it. But the reality of the situation is she's having to make a decision immediately without actually really having enough time to really process and digest her own feelings. In fact, she actually is somebody who's actually distant from her emotions at points in time. And that means that she operates in a very unique way, which is why she's actually okay with Brion, because Brion is also somebody who doesn't dive deeply into his own emotions. So let me say this again. Chante had to stay with Brion even after he cheated twice because she hasn't done the work in order for her to be free and for her to also be in a healthy dynamic of a relationship. I know you're probably saying to yourself, why are we putting all the blame on Chante? Brion's the one that cheated. Absolutely. But everybody has to be responsible for their life. So if she's going to stay, that's on her. So we're going to break it all the way down for you because I want to be able to understand where Brion is coming from and I want you to understand where Chante is coming from as to why this decision at the very end at the bonfire actually had to happen. Okay. So if you're new to the channel, do me a massive favor, like it, share, subscribe, click on that wonderful bell button for the notifications of the uploads. Let's get into the video. First and foremost, I want to go into somewhere. I want to be able to break down and give you a little bit of an understanding here. We got some information on this last episode 10 about Brion's actual background. He spoke about being in foster care. He spoke about being abandoned. He spoke about having to do things on his own. He spoke about the insecurity that he had. He spoke about how he wasn't worthy. He spoke about how he lost his parents to drugs. He grew up in a chaotic background. There was no one there for him. Is this an excuse? No. But I need to be able to bring this so you can understand where we're going with this. He grew up in an environment where it was unpredictable, it was chaotic, it was dangerous, and it was somewhere he was not safe. So he's grown up in chaos. All he knows how to do is chaos. And so, therefore, him actually sleeping with two women was actually a case of sabotage. He wanted to prove to himself, as he told us, I need to see, like, if I can actually do it and then see how I feel after. He was trying to gauge how he really felt about Chante based upon if he'd done the threesome, he would feel differently. The reality of the situation was it's self-sabotage because you had somebody that you loved, you cared about, you said that no one else can touch. And yet you find yourself in a position you going into a threesome. Interesting stuff. I mean, when we look at it from that perspective, we have to look at it a bit more deeper. Why is it then you're just going to be doing that? Why would you want to put yourself in a position where, you didn't care, right? In fact, let's have a look.
The only time I crossed the boundary was the threesome, right in the bathroom. Regretting it, just deflection, scared to admit my truth that I fucked up. Me being so prideful and egotistical, I just try to act like, it ain't no problem.
Well, the one thing that he actually misses off that list is that he is self-sabotaging. And this is, again, not an excuse. We are explaining the behavior. Him self-sabotaging is because of one thing and one thing only. Okay, let me stop that. But the one thing that he's actually afraid of is that he does not believe he's actually worthy. I know. Oh, that old dribble that men like to say, I didn't feel worthy and that's why I cheated. I'm not saying she should take him back. I'm telling you that she shouldn't take him back. But this is actually the reason why he actually did this. And this is going to come back down to what we talk about attachment styles. So I'm going to play this clip and then we're going to break down attachment styles for you guys to really fully understand where we're actually coming from.
Honestly, it
Okay.
doesn't. But I just want to show you that I'm a changed man. And I'm honestly not worthy of you. And that's a hard pill to swallow. Because you deserve the best, the absolute best of.
Yeah, and he says she needs the absolute best, and the reason why he's saying that is because he knows that he messed up. But number two, also because he actually doesn't feel worthy. You see, a lot of men who cheat like this, who are serial cheaters, actually don't feel worthy of love. And as soon as they get it, they're like an orphan in a healthy environment. They must self-sabotage because what's really happening to them is they're waiting for the other shoe to drop. Whenever they get into a healthy dynamic, stability is boring and stability is too comfortable. In fact, it's actually more scary than being in a chaotic environment because he grew up in chaos, remember? So what's familiar is chaos. When it's not chaotic, he starts asking questions. When will it get chaotic? And because he's so used to chaos, he creates the chaos himself if it doesn't come quickly enough. Wow. So now we're in a situation where we can understand why he ends up doing what he did with those ladies. Okay, yeah, we can talk about how he didn't respect her and how he didn't love her enough to be able to stay faithful. Yeah, I agree. I'm not going to deny all those things. But the reality of the situation is he doesn't feel worthy, and until he fixes that "I don't feel worthy" wound, he gonna cheat again. It might not be today and it might not be tomorrow, but it might be next week. He gonna cheat once more again. That is why those men that you choose keep cheating on you. And I hope it's not you personally, but I'm just saying out there. You know what I mean? Right? They cheat again. Right? So let's just look at something, because the other aspect also too is that Chante, I said that Chante had to choose him. And the reason why I say she had to choose him is because she also is carrying a particular wound. Now, I started thinking that she was more anxious. I think she actually also might be a little bit more avoidant. And the reason why I say that also is because she couldn't actually process her emotions. She was very, how do I call this, stoic. And she had become very detached from her emotions. I originally thought she was just an anxious individual. But as I just started doing this video, I started remembering that Mark was trying to get her to process her emotions throughout the course of the season, and she couldn't do that. That's a typical avoidant response, not an anxious person. That's a typical avoidant response. Now, I don't really know her background as such of what she experienced, but some of those behaviors would obviously lead itself to being something that was more anxious. But maybe she's more anxious because he's more avoidant. Let me explain what I mean by this. When we talk about attachment styles is done by John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth, okay? And what they deciphered is that young children, the way they attach to a caregiver. And so when the caregiver left, the child would respond to the caregiver in a particular way. Avoidant children showed like no indifference. Like they were indifferent because they had learned how to not rely on their caregiver. And so what ends up happening is that people who oftentimes are in oftentimes people who are in situations where they're either emotionally neglected or they are in chaotic backgrounds where they're afraid of the caregiver. Maybe the caregiver is very angry or abusive in some shape or form, and then the caregiver is also comforting. So you can they do bad cop good cop in the household. The child feels this unpredictability, which is what I said about also our good brother here, Brion, right? That fearful avoidance. But what we see with Chante is that fearful avoidance carry both the anxious and the avoidant traits. Therefore, there is something else happening here, because what we're really seeing from Chante is more the anxious side, except when she has to process her emotions. And I wish I had a clip for you, but I totally forgot about this part. So we see more of her clinging to Brion. Like towards the end, we see how she said, "I gotta respect myself."
Road, okay, but I think right now I have to choose myself.
I have to, lay in the bed I made.
She talks about how she has to, respect herself and all this kind of stuff, and then ends up making another decision in the end. Why? Because she couldn't let him go. And in fact, throughout the whole course of the show, we saw her actually always trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, and then we see her like kind of like not processing what's really happening when she sees it on the screen. Yeah, she got emotional, but she wasn't processing it. And Mark was telling her, "You need to process this." Right? And yet we're seeing her at the end clinging onto Brion, saying, "I'll go home with him." Right? Now, one thing about anxious people is that they want to they want to be able to cling on to a partner because they're afraid of abandonment. See, the fearful avoidants are afraid of rejection, betrayal, and abandonment. So Brion was afraid of her abandoning her, so he tries to abandon her first. Self-sabotage. And then with Chante, what we're seeing is this need to kind of cling to Brion, even though he has done her dirty. And anxious people oftentimes are overgivers because they're consistently trying to prove that they are worthy of love. And that's what puts them into relationships where there's a deficit. You see, the overgiver oftentimes meets the overtaker, and the overtaker gon' take, and the overgiver gon' give. And the overgiver feels they're most valued when they're giving, but they don't know how to receive and take themselves. That's why they're emotionally unavailable. And that's why also avoidance tends to be emotionally unavailable, because it can take but not necessarily give. So with Chante, we're seeing her consistently focus on his needs. Something that anxious people do is over-identifying with the other person's needs. In fact, they take it on as if it's their own needs, and it's actually them, when it isn't them, because they don't have good boundaries. They don't know where they begin and where they end. And so she stays in this emotionally unsafe relationship because she's afraid of being abandoned, the core wound of an anxious person. often drawn to emotionally unavailable partners like Brion in the hopes of earning their love. Because if she can overturn Brion, if she can turn him around, if she can cause him to come towards her, then she has undone whatever history that she has been in as a child that made her feel like she had to earn the love. Right? Let's play 2 clips that will kind of speak to this.
Put me there first too. Yeah. You were the first, and he forced you to do this. Yeah. And he has to live with that. I know that hurts you. Worth.
I've always known my worth. It's just hard when you love someone and they do something so bad.
Well, actually, she said she knew her worth, but then made a decision at the very end after saying you got to respect me and said, actually, I'm going to leave with him. So does she really know her worth? No. That's the whole point. A lot of people believe they know their worth, but when it comes down to the crunch between their actual, love, safety, putting themselves first and making themselves a number one priority, yeah, you find out, that they don't actually know their worth because they don't put themselves first. But here's a more better clip to really understand why I'm saying Chante has a very anxious disposition. She might still be a fearful avoidant because she didn't process her emotions, but she leans more on the anxious scale because when it comes to fearful avoidance, they can lean both on the anxious and they can lean on the avoidant, but they may lean more to one side than the other. It also depends also on the partner they're with. With Brion always constantly pulling away, she might have also felt like she had to always be trying to cling on to him. That's why she always shows her more anxious side. Okay, but watch this clip here.
I put others before myself. Every situation. And I probably put you before myself in a lot of time.
So she admits to us that she puts him before herself. Guess who does that? Anxious people. They put you before themselves because, again, they're always in a space of trying to earn your love. So when I said Chante had to stay, absolutely she had to stay because she now needs to prove that she's worthy of Brion. Crazy, right? Because why would she have to prove that she's worthy of Brion if Brion's the one that cheated on her and is the one that's done her dirty? Well, because actually when you cheat on somebody, it actually says that they're not valuable. That's what it sends a signal to the other party and how they're going to receive it. I'm not valuable. I'm not worth you being faithful to. And actually it compounds the interest of what you already felt about yourself before. So now she's doubly whammed. So she needs to prove by staying with Brion and seeing the good in him and trying to make him this great man. She's actually trying to force things. She's manipulating the whole situation. She doesn't realize. She needs to stop. She needs to put herself first and stop allowing Brion to lead the charge. Now, we find out so much more about Brion because he gives us a little bit of his background. Listen to this.
Foster system. Tough childhood growing up, being a black guy in a white family. Left my house at 17 years old, living with my best friend, went to college by myself. And it's tough driving yourself to college with all your shit packed,
He's actually gone through quite a lot. Again, no excuses. He's gone through quite a lot, which is why I was saying to you about his background and how it always plays out to be in a very fearful, avoidant state. But let me just show you this graphic that I have on the screen. Now, I'm probably behind it and I'm still moving, so I'll try to keep it still as possible. Look at this relationship dynamic at a glance between Brion and Chante. Now, I've put Chante as anxious, preoccupied, but I think she's more fearful, avoidant with an anxious lean. Okay, so we can still use it because it's still in the same frame, right? Detachment style, fearful, avoidant versus preoccupied. The core fears, vulnerability, rejection, and I think also you have to add in there abandonment as well, right? For Chante, it's abandonment and not being enough. The response to conflict, shuts down, disconnects, avoids accountability. Clings, over-explains, tries to fix things. Coping mechanisms, goes numb through sex, through distance and silence. We saw him obviously get into threesomes. For Chante, overgiving, forgives quickly, internalizes pain. She literally forgave him right there and then at the bonfire when she should have actually said, I'm choosing me and I'm going to go home alone and I'm going to process it. But she didn't want to because, again, that might feel like abandonment. And so childhood influence is abandonment, foster care, no parents, and for her, likely unmet emotional needs or inconsistency. And then the needs of love is safety to open up slowly, emotional regulation they struggle with, reassurance, consistency, emotional responsiveness. So the reality of the situation is that I love the needs and love here. For Brion, whilst he may seem like a cool customer, his way of actually stabilizing himself is living in chaos. It's doing chaotic things. It's like having threesomes. That helps him stabilize himself because that's normal to him. And until he heals, that won't stop being normal. And then for Chante, actually her normal is when she's consistently chasing and consistently in a place of needing reassurance and needing and never getting that consistency. And always being overly emotionally responsive and over caring and over giving because that makes her feel valuable because if she's chasing, she's of service. Wow. Okay. And I'm going to, that's a bit early. So we'll talk about that in a second. So these two Okay, going back to that original response, Chante had to stay after Brion cheated. Okay, she had to stay. She had to make it work. She had to make it figure out, how do I regain my value? Right? How do I regain my value? How do I make sure that I'm still intact? Right? So those aspects. Now there is aspects of trauma bonding here. Their connection through toxic may feel deep due to shared emotional highs. She spoke about how, I always wanted him to show me this other side of himself. So she thinks she's won. She thinks she's won because, he finally showed that side of him that I've always wanted him to show. I finally got over there. I just had to get cheated on, but I finally got over that hump. He's finally showing me more of himself. Thank God. Right? Thinking that because you have an emotional investment, you should stay longer. But it's harder to leave when you're in that situation. Right? Low self-worth may believe that you are actually having worth, but you are doing things that are actually going against your value and your worth. So Chante wanting to be close, wanting to be attached, wanting a relationship will consistently keep on grabbing onto Brion. But Brion's fear is closeness. Brion wants to be loved, but then rejects it at the same time. That's the fearful avoidant conundrum. That they want love, but they also reject it at the same time. So the more that Chante loves him, the more he's going to reject it. Because really and truly, he doesn't feel worthy. And when it gets too intense and too deep, he has to run away. This creates a push and pull effect. So when actually you could be in a more healthy relationship where we have a stable one, he's going to always destabilize it. Always.
Okay. So Brion has made the choice that after all of this and all that he's learned, he wants to leave with you.
I want to be respectful of myself.
But Chante is going to go with Brion because, first and foremost, self-worth, self-esteem, respect, self-respect are very difficult things to really kind of, I guess, quantify, right? They often are attached to actions that we take in regards to what's going to be the betterment of ourselves. Unfortunately, in this situation, we have seen Brion misappropriate his energy with dealing with other women, and has done so in a way that has hurt his one and only that he said he claims and loves. And I don't disbelieve him that he cares and loves for her. What I do believe is that because his fears outweigh his actual ability to stay faithful, he's always going to do her dirty until he heals that wound. And Chante is going to consistently be able to stay in a relationship like this because she's got something to prove. So until these two begin to heal, until somebody says enough is enough, I want better for myself, I don't believe I'm in the most healthiest relationship, I don't believe this is the right thing to do, they are going to stay in this relationship. And you're going to stay in those relationships if you don't begin to look at why you attach yourself in this relationship. What is it? What's the reward here? You tell me, what's the real reward here? Being in a situation like this, what is the reward? For Chante, she gets to prove all the hate is wrong. She finally turned that boy, into a man. That man has finally reached the pinnacle of where he realizes actually it's her that he wants, and that he's willing to be faithful now because how great of a woman she is. It sounds great to have that reassurance, but the reality of the situation is he came back because he's afraid of being alone. He came back because his own value is being questioned. He came back because actually he already told us, he already knew you were going to take him back, because in reality he's weighed you up and sized you up. He knows that you don't have no self-worth, and therefore he can go and come as he pleases. He gonna continually cheat if you keep him around. He gonna continue to cheat. Mm. Mm. Anyway, listen, look, this is the kind of stuff we do in coaching all the time. Okay, we talk about this a lot of the time. We break this stuff down with clients. I want you to understand that you don't have to be alone in this. If you're somebody who has consistently put other people's needs first, you're struggling to put yourself first with family, with friends, with lovers, this is a great time to reach out to me. We go deep and we tackle the root issue of why you are doing what you're doing. You stay with me long enough, trust me, we'll unravel all of this, because the reality is it's the root, it's the childhood, it's the trauma you face. It is a lack of ability to be able to change the narrative that forces us to do certain things to try and replicate those scenarios in our adult relationships. If you don't solve the issue of abandonment, you're going to find yourself in relationships with people who abandon you, or you end up abandoning them. We call that runner and a track star. She's going to run away when it gets hard. right? So you aren't going to overcome until you look at the foundations and realize the foundations are faulty and begin to repair the foundations to build a good solid housing on top of that foundation. You can only build up when the foundation's actually been built down. So we need to tackle down, then go up. All right. So we appreciate you. Stay locked, stay loaded. And if I'm lying, I'm flying. And if I'm flying, I'm lying. Trust me. You know, I want you to be safe out here in the streets. I appreciate you as well. Poor Chante. She had to stay with Brion, even though he did what he did.